Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Momster podcast. I'm your host, Veronica Castellanos. And as always, you are listening in on an Amplify Her Media Network podcast. Today, I have a guest, and I'm going to let her introduce herself. That way she can give you her introduction.
Hi, I'm Isabelle. I'm Veronica's stepdaughter.
Yeah. This has actually been a long and waited for interview. I think we've been planning it for a year.
Yeah, ever since you first were wanting to start the podcast.
Yeah. So it's been more than a year then. It's been a long time. And I think the stars finally aligned for us to get together.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that one of the topics I want to talk about, there's a few of them. So this might be like a two-parter or something because I think there's a lot to be said and a lot that listeners want to hear.
Yes.
One is kind of like, how do you feel with the dynamic of blended families now versus when we first started blending?
I was actually thinking about that earlier. I think versus when it first happened, it was more like none of my friends understood it and I was kind of alone. But now that I meet more people and I become friends with more people, it has become more normalized. So I feel like it's almost more rare now to not have a blended family than to have a blended family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember how old you were when you met me?
I think I was 6. I think because I remember mom and dad stopped being together at when I was 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you remember meeting me at all? Is that a memory? Is that a core
Yeah,
memory?
I do remember. I feel like you were in the garage. That's where I remember. And then I remember the whole fiasco of what happened after that with mom and dad. So, and
You know what? I actually don't have that as I know what you're talking about. I know the
yeah.
instance you're talking about, but I actually, for me, that's not my first. I never saw you that day. I didn't see you, so I don't count it as me having been introduced. Although I think dad did want that to be the first day.
Wait, I think wasn't it at that Christmas party? The Christmas thing, I think it was for work.
No, you and I met at a Christmas event
Yeah.
at Thea Patty's house.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it was Thea Patty's house. And everybody was there. Everybody that, lives in Lake LA was there. And you just hid behind your dad.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, nope. And you just slid behind him and was looking at me sideways,
I just remember being so confused and I was just so socially awkward back then. I was just I didn't want anything. And then there's already a bunch of people. So I was just
Yeah.
all tight and confused.
So why were you confused? This is a good question.
I think I was more confused because I didn't with my mom when we moved out and we moved in with her boyfriend at the time. We didn't have a proper introduction. So I was like, oh, we're just moving in with this guy that I don't know, but okay. And he's my friend now. I think that's just what happened in my brain. And
Yeah.
when I first met you, I was just kind of who is she? I don't what is she? Who is she? And I was just very confused. I think I was just so little, I didn't understand. It didn't comprehend in my mind of everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's probably pretty much spot on because if I remember correctly, and shame on your dad, he introduced me as a friend.
Yeah.
This is my friend Veronica. And I'm like, all right, we're friends. Got it. But in your dad's defense, I think when we had talked about meeting you, like introducing me and you, he was like, look, I want to make sure that this is going in the right direction and that you guys are going to get along. So I'm not introducing you as anything more than a friend, because if things don't go the right way, you are just another friend that I introduced to her. Because from my understanding, he had introduced other friends. Like you got to meet all kinds of friends in his single life stage
Yeah,
that were women and men,
I
right?
just have no like memory of that. Like I just kind of I feel like the way he did that was like excellent because I have no memory of it versus like
Yeah.
and then once he just found the one, like then it was like okay, now we
Yeah.
can move forward.
Yeah. And then we just continuously kept building a relationship, and then I moved in.
Yeah.
What was your thoughts about me moving in?
I think I actually thought it was so cool because I remember like when it was just me and my dad, and I'm pretty sure my Uncle Gilbert was living there at the time. There were so many guys in the house. It was so overpowered. And then I was like, finally, like, like I have another friend in the house. And it was just like, it was like super fun to me. I was super excited
Yeah.
and like kind of ready to dive into what was new and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. Okay. So, I think you said something so valuable in the beginning, because I remember when you were little and you would have moments where you would cry to me and you'd tell me like you just felt very outcasted. You felt like nobody understood you. You felt like you couldn't tell your friends that you had that your parents didn't live together, because
Yeah.
when you were younger, you would go to like birthday parties or like play dates, and both mom and dads were in the same household. So
Yes.
you would cry to me about your confusion and like, I just wish my mom and dad didn't separate. And um I think for me, there was a level of like my feelings being hurt, but it wasn't your fault. It was just like, like, oh, I felt for you, number one, like just as a human being to human being, I felt for you, and you're, because I don't come from a blended family, right? Like my parents are
Yeah.
still together. So I understood you, but also there was this level of like, but I'm great.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from, definitely. I think my brain was just so little that I was just
Yeah.
like, it was so overwhelming, like everything that was happening, because just like everything was going on at once. And I
Hmm.
feel like, as like adults, like I knew my mom was able to handle it better because she's an adult and she's like, it's not like it's her mom and dad. And
Yeah.
I know that she didn't understand it. And I feel like it also came from a place where I know dad was way more understanding about it, but he also didn't understand it quite as well. And I felt like I would always like I always felt like how you were saying, like not understand it. And it was just like it was like just crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just remember telling you like at one point this will make more sense, and at one point you'll be able to help someone else going through this process, because I think I even gave you a statistic. I don't know if you remember,
Yeah.
but I was like, like 50% of your friends will have separate parents at one
I do
point.
remember that. And you're so right. Like now I go over to friends' houses, I'm like, oh, this feels more normal. Like, or they come over to my house and they feel more accepted because it's just my mom, or I'm like, whatever. So
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me more of like when that normalcy started setting in for you.
I think it was when I moved to Canoga Park and started going to Chatsworth or wherever I went. I forgot what it's called. But anyways, I met more people that were kind of like, it wasn't the best, like, I don't know how to explain it, but I just kind of met more people that um had like blended families, and then more people so that didn't have another parent in their life. So it was just kind of like, oh, like I never knew that was the case. Like I never knew that could happen. And it kind of came into my brain more. And then I got into middle school, and then it was like, oh, now I'm hanging out more. Now I'm seeing my friends. Now I'm seeing their home lives, and I'm not alone. Like they understand it too.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. So, do the friends that you have that are part of blended families, do you guys talk about what you like and what you don't like about blended families?
Yeah, me and my friend the other day, we were talking about it, and we kind of were comparing and contrasting our like lives with it. And like she was telling me, like how with her family, she always feels like she loves that her mom and dad like get along still, but she always feels really bad, like because of like her having to pick like where she's going and stuff. So we do kind of share that in common, and it's kind of cool. She's one of me and her are really close now. I just met her like maybe a couple like weeks ago. Now we're like all super close. So
Yeah, I think that commonality probably has a lot to do with it, because you and I were talking about holidays
yes.
yesterday. And I actually saw a TikTok, and before we even had the conversation yesterday, I think I had sent you a TikTok or something. I sent you something that was like, hey, we should talk about this. Because one of the I think it was a TikTok, and it said something like, kids in blended families don't like splitting their holidays. Like they feel like they would much rather have an entire holiday with one parent and then just switch years, because to them it's really, and you'd let me know like if you agree, but like the video was saying that to them it's very chaotic to like come into one celebration and then halfway through it like you can't finish celebrating because you have to be going already to the next parent. And that's kind of what we did back in the day.
I've definitely experienced both sides of now and then. And I mean, then it was fun, but I do remember like doing Christmas Eve with you guys, and then like at like 12 in the morning, we'd like meet mom and like an hour away and then go back, and then I'd be like so exhausted. Versus now, I do agree with what you were saying. I feel that I have more time with my both sides of the family. Like even though it could be less time, it feels like it is more time because it's not cutting short and then having to leave. And you get to like, I always remember being so sad, like leaving you guys on Christmas Eve because I was like, I'm having so much fun. I don't want to leave. Or like the opposite with my mom or like whatever. Yeah, but I definitely agree with that.
Yeah. Is there other families that you know that do it differently that you wish you would do it that way?
No, I'm my friends like we never talk about that. Like I feel like everyone does it the same. It's always like I'm at my dad's like for whatever holiday, and we'll talk about it. Like, but everyone does it the same. Like the switching off years.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever met people that did what we did.
Oh, well, that has something to do, I guess. Like, yeah. I don't know. I was never a part of I guess my 2 cents didn't matter. Like I was saying, I had never had anything to do with the holiday schedule. I think that was just, your parents doing the best that they can. And I think one of the things that, like, to your parents' defense, from me looking from the outside in, they both didn't come from blended families. Both of their parents were, I mean, Abuelo has passed away, but they were together at the end, and your grandparents are still together. So I think it was just a huge learning curve for both of them, and they were so young.
Yeah, I feel like that also had a lot to do with it because like they were kind of thrown in this place where they were young too, and they were also trying to grow up. So it was like they're trying to raise me to grow up, and then they're trying to grow up themselves. So it just came with this mumble jumble of like so much, like it got really complicated. And I think that has a lot to do with why like you know, like mom and dad don't get along the best. So I think that has something to do with it because they both didn't have a chance to grow up without each other. They grew up kind of together. I don't know if that makes sense. But
Yeah. 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 And then they grew up separate.
Yeah. And then they're like this whole different world. It's like, yeah.
Yeah. It really is different, just like from, me getting to know dad and the few times that I've gotten to know your mom, they are completely different. So
Definitely.
have you seen a difference because your parents were so young when they had you? Have you seen a difference between children your age that came from older parents versus younger parents like your parents?
I think um like who was it? One of my friends was talking to me and they have older parents, like older parents like in their 50s, and they have more freedom than I do because their parents, no offense, aren't as like there with like the times. But versus like with mom and dad, I don't have as much freedom because they know what could happen. Because like they were literally my age, like maybe not that long ago. So
Yeah.
yeah, the worlds are very different now.
Well, I would even say with technology, like you can't really get past much.
Definitely.
Because we are the generation that grew up with the technology. Like we were there when the first iPhone came out. Like we were there when telephones, like cell phones became more than just a device to call people, right? Like so because we've been through all of that, and not that the older parents from your friend, like, but they're more from like a different era. So
Yes.
you can't get much past your dad and your mom and even me.
More my dad, definitely my dad.
Yeah. Yeah. So with that being said, how do you feel your life has changed and like your navigation through high school? Because this year you started high school and just like this new chapter in your life because we also moved away.
um, it's been a lot. Um, it's definitely stressful. Because I decided to like overwhelm myself with every extracurricular activity I could think of. But it's definitely I do feel part of it. It does feel a little less stressful because I'm not as worried. Like when I have a basketball game or I have practice on a weekend that I'm with you guys. I think it's almost a little better because um it's not as stressful on everybody
Mm-hmm.
and not as emotional either. And definitely, but I do have like I literally wake up and I'm just like sometimes I literally want to like just teleport to your guys' house because I miss you guys so much. And it's hard sometimes and I'll just go to school and be in this funk all day because I miss dad or I miss you or I miss the twins. Or like when even with my friends when they show me their little siblings, it makes me want to cry because I miss everyone. But yeah, it's crazy to me though. Like it's really different. It's definitely a change.
Yeah, because now, well, for those that don't know that are listening, we used to do 2 weekends a month, and now we're doing longer stretches of time, like, the breaks that you're going to be getting, right?
Yes.
So, with still keeping in mind like the big holidays, like Christmas, right? Like that one is a big one, I think, for your mom. So
Oh
it
yeah. That's
it's
like the
always
most important holiday to her.
yeah, it's all I think I even had a conversation with your dad at one point one year because he wants to experience stuff with you, not just give your mom all of the experiences. And I think one year I just sat him down and I was like, listen, this is always going to be a fight, so just give it to her. And like it is what it is, like I just don't ever see your mom giving up such a big holiday to her because
She
it's
will
so
never.
important.
Yeah, she will never give up Christmas. I feel like that's kind of her time of year where she like especially this year we've had a lot of emotional things happen in my family. And it's that time of year where my mom just kind of puts it all to the side, and it's like even for her mentally, like she's able to just like it's shut it off for like maybe a few days and just enjoy Christmas. And I feel like that is why she has almost emotional attachment to like the holiday. And I do feel like she should like give dad Christmas like every other year, but I know that will never happen because my mom's really stubborn. So I don't think it will ever happen. Even though
Yeah.
it's really sad, but yeah.
Yeah, especially because we're hundreds of miles away.
Yeah.
So that experience with the twins, and they're only going to be little for so long. They're about to enter school next year. And I mean, you out of everybody knows what school's like, right?
Yeah.
Like you were closer to that age than I was most recently. So I'm last year, you know how I don't believe in Santa and I told them and stuff. And
Yeah.
I don't think they understood the concept, but this year they're not letting me tell them that Santa doesn't exist.
Oh, kind of like when
So
dad had the conversation with me in the car.
yeah, well, they're like full force. Like I told them, no, Santa doesn't exist. And I think Ezzy was like, no, mom, you're wrong. And I was like, okay. So
I
I've tried.
knew. I knew when you told me when you were pregnant, you're like, they're not having Santa. I knew. I was like, that's not possible. Like, no matter what, they're gonna go to school, they're gonna hear about it, they're gonna like watch whatever they're watching and hear about it. I knew. I was like, there's no way.
I mean, I've tried to tell them he's not real, but
I'll give
they're
it
not
to you.
listening. I think they're just, leaning into the magic, and you know what? Fine. Like I'll give
Fine,
them this
whatever.
1 year. I don't know if it's going to stay like that though as the years progress, because they're going to go to school. There's always that one kid that's like, Santa doesn't exist. It's your parents. So like I'm just going to play along until they decide we're no longer playing along to Santa.
Yeah.
But I'm not doing the things, I'm not doing Elf on the Shelf. I'm Are you laughing? Are you doing Elf on the Shelf?
My mom still does an Elf on the Shelf, and she knows I don't believe it's real, but I let her do it because it makes her happy, and it's really funny. Because yesterday, I have a picture on my phone. It was hanging upside down from my ceiling, just there, and I woke up and I was like half asleep, and I was just like, "Oh my lord, that's like in my face." She gets creative. It's kind of scary. Like the elf is just more funny at this point than like the oh my gosh, magic. It's really funny.
Yeah, because I can just imagine your mom tiptoeing around you to try to make that possible while you're sleeping.
Like, yeah, I don't know how she does it. Same thing with how she did Tooth Fairy for so long. I do not know.
Yeah, you cannot tell your mom nothing because she is like, no, Santa does exist. I'm like, good for you, bro. Good for you. I could not keep up with that much.
Like I told her I was in the car with my friend and she was kind of embarrassing me, and I was like, Mom, Santa's not real. And then she's like, you're wrong. Santa is real. It's the magic of Christmas. And I was like, oh my God, I'm sorry. It looked like I shattered her heart. So I play along with it. Yeah. I feel like I'm the grown up playing along and she's Santa.
But I think that has a lot to say with how much she takes it to heart. And I think that's why I was like, look, just let it go, bro. Like that's just a fight you're never going to win. Or, yeah, I think as parents, there's just things that we just got to let go of. And that was one of them, unfortunately, for dad. But, you're going to get to a point where you're older and you make your decisions, and that's like 18 plus.
Yeah.
Like at that point you can't be told nothing, and you make your decisions on that. But it's okay. It's like no big deal.
I feel like definitely when I'm older, but I always felt like Christmas Eve was our thing. Like it wasn't like, I feel like I've never really had, like, we never really did Christmas. Like, even the times I would be there, we never really did Christmas. It was always Christmas Eve with, like, uncles and aunts and everybody, and, like, opening presents. And I feel like it always feels weird to me, like, whenever you guys have Christmas Day, because I'm just like, this is not normal. Like, it feels really different. It's very, it's a culture thing, and it has different, like my mom is just Christmas Day, like, all day.
Yeah, because, for those that don't know, Isabelle is, has two cultures. She has her mom's side and then dad's side, which is on the Hispanic Guatemalan side. So have you encountered anyone that's like, oh, your last name is Castellanos, do you speak Spanish?
Oh my gosh, everyone at school calls me white and tells me I'm like a basic white girl and stuff. And it's kind of funny, but sometimes I snap. Yeah. But it's always funny when someone calls me white, where I just like, I'm not white, like, with the most straight face, and it's the most hilarious reaction. I'm like, where do you think I got this hair from? And these eyes. Like, just because I drink Starbucks once a week does not mean that. Like, dude, but it's funny. They do ask me if I speak Spanish, and I'm always just like, no, but I will when I take Spanish class.
One day I will.
One day it will happen. It's gonna show up one Christmas and just fluent.
Love it. As fluent as you can be.
Of course.
That's funny. Okay, so what would be one message that you would give to parents that are thinking about divorce?
Just hear the child out before you like do anything permanent. And I also feel like you like should hear what the child thinks about it, like, and let them tell you, and like, don't get mad at them, like, if the child like favors their mom or favors their dad or whatever, because it's really not their fault in the end. And just kind of like hear them out before you make any huge decisions. But it is definitely for the better. Like, parents arguing around the child is not the best thing, so divorce is better. But like, I feel like the child should get a slight, not the whole thing, but a slight choice of like, is this okay and is this okay, like, options. Because it could be like a huge change like that, like, messes with the brain, and it's very scary. So,
if you could go back in time, what would you tell your mom about what you're going to experience? And then the same question afterwards for your dad.
Okay. For my mom, I would literally tell her, I'd be like, who is this guy? Why are we moving in with him? I don't want to. Like, that would just be like my flat out answer. Because like, it led to some things, and like, it's just like, no, best friend, no, like, please stop. And then for dad, honestly, I feel like me and dad, like, he always had a hard time understanding that, like, I was so used to being with, even now, like, I'm so used to being with my mom all the time, that it's a very big emotional attachment, and it's very hard for me not to, like, I miss her, or like when I would cry like every day, like, I miss my mom. Like, it was hard to like, and then like, no one understood me because they thought like, well, like, she doesn't want to be here, but it wasn't that case. It was just like, it's a hard adjustment. So I definitely like talk to dad about that, and just like tell him that. But
yeah, those are actually really good answers, because I think in the midst of everything, like when people get separated or divorced, or go through just even a slight separation, but eventually they get back together, right? Like, when that happens, from what I've seen, like, the adults just get very like narrow on what they're thinking and feeling, and it can blind them to what their children or child is feeling and experiencing,
because they're also going through like an emotional time, because they're like leaving the person that they had a full-on child with. Like, that's definitely something that's wired in the brain, and it's like, they're trying to get over it and trying to raise you at the same time. And I feel like also parents that get divorced should like go to therapy, like even when they're not together anymore, just like go to therapy and like even for a little bit, because it really helps. Like even with my experience, for like the one time, maybe 2 times I've actually gone, like it makes you feel better a lot, and it's very helpful even though a lot of people doubt it. Therapy helps.
So are you saying therapy together as the separate parents, or therapy by themselves?
I mean, you definitely could do it together, but by yourself, so you can understand your own thoughts, because it's very hard to like from what I've seen. It's hard.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty fair statement.
Yeah.
And if you could go back in time and tell your younger self something, what would you like the part in life where everything was chaotic and things were changing rapidly, what would you tell her?
I would just tell myself like everything's gonna be okay. Like calm down and just like it's gonna be fine. Like you're okay. You're gonna be okay. And it's just like I feel like I would have benefited from that so much. Just knowing like, okay, everything's gonna be okay. Like my world isn't collapsing.
Yeah.
And, yeah, because it definitely felt like the world was collapsing during that time period. But
yeah.
Okay.
And what would you tell the parents or the step parents, like when a woman or a man gets introduced to the child, and whether they decide to stick for the long run like I have, or step away at one point, like what would you tell those people that are open to dating parents?
So I think unless you are full on like ready for it and it's been like over 6 months, almost a year, don't like come into the house and like just be a parent, like because that child doesn't know you and that child's gonna be like, what, you're not my dad, you're not my mom, like who do you think you are? Like when you tell them something, definitely I feel like the way we were introduced was good, because like I kind of looked at you like a friend and I was like, oh, she's my other mom, oh this makes sense now. And then I was like, now like you have authority over me and I listen to you. So
for the most part. That's great. Do you have any questions for me?
I don't think so. I feel like you've answered them all.
I haven't been asked any.
Well, for the time I've known you, let me think. I feel like, how did it feel like meeting me at the first time? Like, what did you first think when I hid behind my dad? Like, what was your first thought?
Well, having been raised Hispanic Mexican, that was so new to me. I think I had seen it in movies, or I had heard that little kids existed like that, but never had it been done to me. And I was a little thrown off, like, oh, okay. And I was even more thrown off when your dad was like, oh, she's just shy. Like he didn't push you to come out from behind him. I think he may have said something like, hey, like, don't be rude. But
he did that.
Yeah, but he did. That's it. Like he didn't push you anymore. And I was like, it's okay. Like, it's really not a problem. And after that, then even that same day, we still warmed up to each other and you slowly came around, and then you just wouldn't shut up.
Oh yeah. It definitely takes a second. And then once you're like, you can ask any of my friends, you're stuck with me. I don't stop talking. Like I can text somebody all day and just like, even if you don't answer, I'll just bug you like all day. Just my personality.
Yeah.
I just want to point out, you made it worse. You just made me stop being shy. So now I'm just more terrible.
Well, definitely one of my favorite stories of you is the Chick-fil-A and making you order for yourself. That's one of my favorite memories of you.
I remember just crying. Like, can I please have chicken nuggets?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that lady thought I was like dying. Like, are you okay?
Yeah.
That happened recently when I was with one of my friends in a McDonald's drive-thru and my mom made me order. And I was like, wait, why am I ordering? And the guy couldn't hear me. Like, I was yelling at the top of my lungs and he still couldn't hear me. And it was the most awkward thing of my life. I was just like, I'm never ordering for myself ever again. I was just traumatized. I was like,
That's funny.
yeah.
So, funny, the kids love Chick-fil-A.
Oh my gosh.
Twins. So the other day we had gone and Z didn't finish everything. So I told him he needed to ask. No, they brought us a box, but we needed a bag. So I was like, okay, Z, you need to ask for a bag. Say, excuse me, can I have a bag, please? And he's like, okay. And he literally, his little soul tried flagging down 2 people until someone finally listened to him. So like people would walk by and be like, excuse me. Like, so,
This poor little heart. He's probably like,
and I just stood there and he would look at me like every time people wouldn't listen to him, he'd look at me and I'm like, you have to speak louder. You need to make sure they hear you. And so finally someone listened to him, was like, yes. And he was like, can I get a bag, please? And at the end, he came up to me. He goes, Mom, I did it. I was like,
I love
high five,
that.
everybody. You did so good.
Yes, definitely. I know for a fact they're not going to be shy.
Yeah, they're not. There's
They're
not
probably the most
of shyness in those
most out, like most definitely most like what is that, like outgoing I've ever met.
Yeah. Well, we're coming up to our time, so I just want to thank you for being brave and coming on the podcast and
of course
talking to us. And I think you're definitely going to come back I want to talk about other things with you, just like things that kids experience that I think you've experienced in a different way. And maybe you can give advice, because we can only give so much advice as adults, right?
Yeah.
So hopefully that'll be our next conversation, if it's okay with you.
Yes, of course. Thank you for having me on here. It's pretty cool podcast. But yeah, I'll definitely be willing to come back. This was fun.
Thank you. Okay, very good. Well, thanks again, everybody. Don't forget to like and follow. And if you're on YouTube, please subscribe. Talk to y'all later.